Okay. Thank you all for being here this evening. I appreciate your participation. My name is Rosalind Antoine, and I'm recording this presentation for Info 5090. And we're talking about the importance of copyright and fair use today. So this is a guide for educators to navigate copyright laws and fair use practices. So these laws and fair use practices are essential for educators to understand as they impact how we use and share materials. So today we're going to learn how to use resources legally and ethically while benefiting from available exceptions like fair use. And first, we're going to talk about copyright. What exactly is copyright? So it's a legal framework protecting creators' rights. So it protects the original works of authorship, such as books, music, artwork, and gives creators exclusive rights to use and distribute their own work. So it applies to tangible creative works, not ideas or facts. An example, a novel is copyrighted. That's a tangible work of art, but not the idea of a hero's journey. That can be in any book, it could be in music, it could be in artwork, because that idea of a hero's journey is not original to one person. And why does copyright matter for educators? Educators need to understand copyright matters because this ensures respect for the creator's work, promotes legal usage of resources, and fosters a culture of academic integrity. So often educators are resource users and creators. And when we follow copyright laws, it ensures that we respect the intellectual property of others and avoids legal issues. So I want you to understand that copyright can serve as a model of integrity for students also, because when we follow copyright laws and we can teach them to our students, then we ensure that that information is passed on to them and that they respect those laws as well when they're doing their own work. So here's some examples of copyrighted material: books, online articles, images, videos, music, and software are all subject to copyright. Even freely accessible online content can be copyrighted unless explicitly stated otherwise. So we need to make sure that just because it's available online doesn't mean it's just free for use. We have to make sure we understand what's copyrighted and what is not. So fair use allows people limited use of copyrighted material without permission, and it's primarily for education, criticism, or research. And it's a critical exception for educators. It allows us limited use of that copyrighted material for teaching and for research. It's not a free pass, however. It's specific. It has specific criteria that must be met. And here are those 4 factors for fair use. So one is purpose. You have to ask yourself, is the material for education or for profit? So nonprofit educational use is obviously favored. The second one is nature. Is the work factual or creative? So factual works are more likely to qualify than fictional. For the amount, how much of it is used. So use only what is necessary for your purpose. So when we get to looking at examples, you want to think about how much is being used. Is it a graph? Is it an excerpt? Is it a whole chapter? Is it a whole book? And then for effect, does it impact the market value of the work? So you want to make sure that when we're deciding if we're using fair use correctly, that we avoid using something that's going to harm the market for the original work. So again, for example, if we're copying an entire chapter, a single chapter rather, or an entire book. Okay, so here are some examples of using fair use in the classroom. Showing short clips from a movie. And if you show a short clip, 2 or 3 minutes, to illustrate a concept, spark a discussion, used as an introductory piece to a new unit. That's an example of using fair use. If you share an excerpt from a book for analysis, a single chart or a graph, something like that would be fair use in the classroom. You want to always link to or use portions, not full copies. And when does fair use not apply? So an example would be copying an entire book for a class and sharing digital copies of textbooks without permission. For example, you couldn't put a link to the online ebook for your class in your Google Classroom. So that would be a violation of fair use. So you always want to be cautious and check copyright status or get permission first. Okay, so based on what we've learned so far, here are some scenarios I want us to discuss. So we're going to discuss whether this scenario falls under fair use or violates copyright. And you're going to provide a rationale based on the 4 factors of fair use: purpose, nature, effect, and amount. So the first one, a teacher wants to use a full chapter from a textbook to distribute as a handout. Would that be fair use or a violation of copyright?
So it's a violation because it's an entire chapter.
Okay, that's right. So that's a violation because it's a full chapter from a textbook, not an excerpt or just a chart or a graph from a chapter. Very good. Okay. The next one, a student uses a copyrighted song in a multimedia project.
So that one is the song in the fair use.
That one would be okay.
Yeah, for purpose.
The nature of it, it's a student trying to.
Right. So that one is fair use because the purpose is for educational work. Okay. The last one, an educator plans to stream a documentary from a personal Netflix account in class.
That one would not be fair use because the teacher's using a Netflix account, which is a paid account.
Right. So that one is definitely a violation of copyright. You can't use your personal Netflix, Hulu, any kind of streaming account while you're in class because that impacts the ability of the creator to earn money from their work. Okay, so what are some alternatives? Let's look at this. So using open educational resources or OER materials are free to use, modify, and share, and they can provide an alternative to copyrighted works. So these are adaptable materials. There are websites like OER Commons or OpenStax, and these encourage the adoption. These are places you can go to avoid copyright concerns. Okay, so Creative Commons licensing, if you use graphics like the one in this slideshow, this graphic is a Creative Commons image that you can access through PowerPoint. You can click on a little box and it'll only give you Creative Commons licensed images, so you know you have something that's fair use. So Creative Commons licensing is a system allowing creators to grant specific permissions for their work, like allowing reuse with attribution. For example, if you look at images or any kind of material online, you have key licenses and you'll see At the bottom, it'll say CC-BY, and that means you have to attribute the work to the creator. For this one, it says CC-BY-NC for non-commercial use. So this is for an educational presentation, so I could use it for my presentation. You can also search for CC licensed images on Flickr as another place to find those materials. Okay. So one example is images. So you can use an image found online in a presentation. You always want to check for a copyright and cite the source, or use an image like the one again here I have here for a Creative Commons license. Unsplash is another free platform that you can use, or you can just check for the licenses. And you want to model that behavior for your students just as a way of modeling good practices. So for videos, streaming a YouTube video in class, you want to always ensure that these are from legitimate sources. You want to avoid downloading unless explicitly permitted. So one problem people have is showing YouTube videos without understanding their copyright. So a solution for that is to embed the videos or to link directly to ensure legitimate use. And you want to avoid downloading content unless explicitly allowed. And another one is printed materials. So if you distribute a scanned textbook chapter, you want to be sure to always check the publisher's policy on that. Some publishers will give you permission to use small portions without having to contact them. Some will let you use the entire chapters for classroom use only, but check their policy first. Limit the portion to what's fair under fair use. So again, you can always use OER as a source or your library reserves. And some copyright resources for educators, library services at your institution, websites like Creative Commons and open access repositories, educational technology specialists. A quick summary and best practices. Respect copyright laws, understand fair use, leverage OER, and always attribute sources. So I hope you have a basic understanding of copyright and fair use, that you know where to find help for some CC resources and also using OER. Lead your students by example. Always think of what students are doing. They're watching you, not always listening to you. So they watch what you do now and don't listen to what you say quite as much. So lead by example. And I want to end with questions. Anybody have questions about what you heard today? No questions? Well,
I do have one question.
okay.
I remember hearing, what exactly is OER?
OER is open educational resources, and they are free for us to use and modify. It's a repository for us. And websites like OER Commons is one place to go for OER materials. OER Commons. Do you have any other questions?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, well, I appreciate your presence and your assistance in the presentation today. I'm gonna stop